Hi, folks. Thanks for joining. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Rob Koplowitz, and I've been for many years an industry analyst around the area of process automation and digital process automation. So I'm really delighted to be here. I'm particularly delighted to be here today because I'm with Paul Holmes-Higgin, who I've worked with for many, many years. Hi, Paul. And I have a great deal of respect for Paul. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to talk for about 15 minutes on industry trends around process automation. And then I'm going to bring Paul back, and Paul and I are going to bat back some topics back and forth and just talk about the state of process automation and process optimization today. So wave goodbye to Paul. He'll be back in 15 minutes. And we'll move forward there. We were very purposeful when we came up with the title for this, the critical role of process automation in driving competitive advantage. I really enjoyed Agim's keynote this morning. I hope you did as well. And it hit on a lot of the technical topics that are going to be underpinnings of what we're going to discuss today, the things that you need to have in place from a technical perspective in order to have a organizational DNA that drives competitive advantage through digital process automation. So the first thing I kind of want to bring up is we don't really know where we stand with a lot of investments in the market today. It's difficult to say. We're in the midst of a sort of an economic downturn. It feels like we're coming out of an economic downturn. Investment patterns change, and we have folks who invest more heavily because they want to look for competitive advantage coming out of the downturn. They want to outflank the competition. We have folks who cut back on their investments. Maybe they're making some budgetary considerations. Digital process automation is particularly interesting because we have people that invest more heavily because they're looking for efficiencies. They're looking to take cost out of the organization. This has always been an amazing place to try to drive efficiency, but we really don't want to talk about that today. What I do want to talk about is if you are ignoring digital process automation, if you're ignoring process optimization, be aware your competitors are not, right? These are the areas where people have, drive distinct competitive long-term advantage and put down foundational investments that are very, very effective for a very, very long time. So we're going to talk about three topics today, and Paul and I are going to drill into some of these a little bit more as I finish the presentation portion here. The first one is why would you invest in process optimization and process automation? What is it that we're looking to accomplish from a business perspective? How does it support your business strategy? The second piece I want to talk about is when you should be investing in process automation. What is the optimal time to make these investments? And as Agim pointed out during his keynote, AI is really a hot topic, a topic of big conversation today. We have to address the elephant in the corner. How does it relate to process automation? Is it going to fundamentally change how process automation works? So with that in mind, why do we invest? And I think it comes down to three basic issues. We invest first and foremost for innovation. Investing in process optimization and process automation allows us to build a foundation within our enterprises that allows us to innovate quickly, to be agile, to be adaptable to market conditions and market opportunities. Secondly, we invest for efficiency, right? We can take cost out. We can make processes run more quickly. We can make them run at lower cost. I don't like to think of that as being as important as investing for effectiveness. Effectiveness is that we are investing in better outcomes. We are investing in better results for your customers, for your patients, for your citizens, and for your employees. So with that in mind, I do like to start off with stories. And I'll ask a question is, have you ever sold a car? Have you ever had to be in a position where you had to go sell a car? And in the good old days, we had to meet this guy and we had to trust this guy. We went down to the car lot and we assumed he would take care of us. Or maybe we assumed he wouldn't take care of us. But there's a better way. We have information, we have data, we have lots of sources that make this better, sort of. So I was in the position of having to sell a car recently, and I looked at all the things that were available to me. And one, we have online sources. So here in the US, I don't know how international this is, we have Kelly Blue Book, which allows us to establish the value of a car. We have things like eBay Motors that will help us do that. A lot of data, a lot of information. we can reach customers. We can go out through social media, through things like eBay and Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace, and talk directly to customers. We get to have strangers come to our house, which is always lovely in this model, or maybe not so much. We can have people take test drives. We can certainly schedule that more effectively. I don't know if I would rather be in that car with the person test driving it or not, but in any event, it's not something I'm particularly interested in. We can have mechanics do evaluation of the car. We get bartering, which is never particularly interesting or fun. They're going to give us a check. I hope it's good. I hope I'm not the victim of fraud here. And then lastly, maybe we end up going down to the Department of Motor Vehicles and standing in a long line to transfer ownership. So we've got a lot of information. We've got a lot of tools, but we don't have a great process. What we're missing is somebody who's taken ownership of a consistent, optimized, orchestrated process to disrupt this in a significant way. So I want to walk you through how we ended up selling the car that we had to sell, which was through an organization called CarMax. I pulled up an application, really simple mobile application, and I filled out the application. I began the application, filled out all the information, which wasn't very much because they rely very heavily on integration to get the information out of back-end systems. I had to upload a few pictures, driver's license, car titles, where they used intelligent document processing to be able to make sense of those for me. I entered the VIN number, the vehicle identification number. This integrated with all the back-end systems that said, what was this car when it was originally sold? What were all of the different options that were on it? What was the condition of it? What was the engine, et cetera? I described the vehicle condition. They took my word for it at this point in time. And I said, well, there's a little oxidation. It's not too bad. And they made me an offer. They said, this is what we will pay you for this car. I want to point out that at this point, I am 15 minutes into this process. This is something that used to be a long-running process, which is becoming almost transactional in terms of how it worked for me. So then I had to go in. They confirmed the condition of the car. Yeah, you were honest. It was what we said it was. They did an automated tile transfer. They had all of the automated capabilities to take the information that I had provided to them and do a transfer through the Department of Motor Vehicles from me to them. And then they went over and they cut me a check. That was an hour. So that whole nasty process with all those information sources is now turned into an orchestrated process that is innovative. I loved it. I love the experience. It's efficient. They're selling cars at a volume that is completely unlike anything I've seen before. But most of all, I want to point out it was effective. I really liked going through this process. I really thought this was a massive improvement. What is this going to do to all the other car sellers? What is this going to do to all the other people who are doing it online? I don't know. I think it's going to disrupt it in a massive way. So a question comes up, when should you be investing? And the answer is you should always be investing. This is not a downturn thing. This is not a we're building a new program thing. This is part of our organizational DNA. This is something that we do all the time. It is a primary business objective. I'm really excited to see the story for Kindred Credit Union, where they're talking about taking this and spreading it throughout the entire organization. I think that's really an interesting case study and probably the most valuable thing I'll be able to take out of the conference today. Although I'm sure there's going to be value all over the place, but that's exactly what we're talking about. You start small, you look for opportunities, and you spread this through the entirety of your organization. And who's participating? Everyone. Process optimization becomes part of every employee's job. It's no longer bring in the big systems integrator, have them do the big bang project. It becomes something that we're all thinking about every day in terms of how do we make our job better. Sometimes it's big, like the CarMax example. Sometimes it's a fundamentally different business model. Sometimes it's simply, how do I do my job more effectively with the people that I work with? And how does that ultimately affect the customers and the citizens and the patients who we as an organization serve? So continuous improvement, it's got to be part of your organizational DNA. Why is this so critical? Well, efficiency is critical to survival. We don't like to lead with efficiency and cost effectiveness, but if you aren't, your competitors are, you don't want to be at a competitive disadvantage in terms of your cost structure within your organization. Be efficient. Look for efficiencies where you can. but not during a downturn. You're doing this all the time. It's simply good business and something you're always looking for. It opens up new opportunities for innovation. When we look at that example around CarMax and selling a car in a fundamentally different way, it's built on the ability to drive a process from end to end, that the process is orchestrated, that the data sources are integrated, the ancillary technologies that we need are deeply integrated, and we can move very quickly and adapt when we need to. It can lead to more effective outcomes. We don't, again, want to lead with, it's going to take cost out. I had a better experience. The people with digital workforce who have aftercare treatment for cancer, and one of, again, examples of one of the case studies that's coming up, those people are looking for a more effective outcome. That is not what they want to be spending their time doing, is dealing with paperwork at a time like that. They're looking for better, more effective outcomes. It leads to consistent outcomes. We don't often talk about this, but if we do things in an automated, optimized way, they execute the same way each time. We enforce that they are done properly and to the standards that we expect each time. We don't have every part of the organization doing something differently. And in a world of legal and regulatory compliance, et cetera, it lowers risks. It lowers risks associated with fines. It lowers risks associated with reputation, any one of a number of areas where this becomes very, very important. And lastly, I would say your customers, your citizens, your patients, your employees, the case studies you're going to hear from during the course of this conference, they won't stand for a bad experience anymore. They will leave. So we end up with this virtuous cycle, a cycle where we have people identifying opportunities. We have business knowledge, we have users, we have analytics running within our organization, we have outcomes that are not coming out properly. And we look at those and we re-engineer them. We re-engineer them through process mapping, through documentation, through through stakeholder participation. Hopefully the stakeholders are increasingly bringing forward ideas as to where the business can run more effectively. Here's the piece where things get interesting. From a technology perspective, with digital process automation, with potential integration of RPA, robotic process automation into that stack, with low code and AI emerging, we can automate very quickly in a much, much different way than we did before. This is, again, not the big bang projects we're talking about. We're not talking about turning the aircraft carrier necessarily. We're talking about 1,000 speedboats turning in unison, the whole organization having the ability to turn very, very quickly in a coordinated manner. And finally, we have a technology foundation that allows us to do that. And lastly, we don't trust that these things work. We measure them. We have analytics. We use process and task mining. We have stakeholder feedback. We have customer response. Did things get better? Do I have a better experience now? So this virtuous cycle becomes something that we're always working on. Everybody in the organization is always working on it. And again, I like to use the term, it becomes part of our organizational DNA. So let's move on to the elephant in the corner for a few minutes before I bring Paul back and just say, is AI going to disrupt process automation? Well, yes, it is. I mean, again, give us very good examples of where Flowable is making investments, but also no, right? Also no. So if you're out there asking the question, how do I fundamentally shift from a digital process automation, a BPM mindset, and just do everything in AI? The answer is you're not going to do that. You are going to actually have these combination of technologies that works really well together. And it's not anything new. So, this is an article that I wrote in my days when I was working for Forrester around artificial intelligence revitalizing business process management, a term I dropped in favor of digital process automation. But note the date. It was February 10th, 2017, and I certainly wasn't the first one to come up with this. This is something that had been around for a very, very long time already, and was already a source of deep investment for organizations like Flowable in the digital process automation space. So what's different now? Well, I mean, we've got this combination of things. We've got the ability to take things like content intelligence, intelligent document processing, take unstructured data, turn it into something structured. We've got advanced analysis, the ability to predict how a process might be better run, or how you might actually build a process, or what your next logical step in a process might be. We've got image recognition, we've got content generation, the ability to generate content that is actually required to support the process, and a lot more, right? This list goes on and on and on. We've got chat capabilities, which have been part of Flowable for a very long time. The vendors in this space have been leading with this for a long time. They've been actually doing support and integration and taking all of these relevant technologies and building them in. So what makes this moment in time so important? It's better. The technology has fundamentally advanced. I worked for IBM on their Watson product about, I guess, about 9 or 10 years ago. And to see where we've gone with AI, it's better, it's faster, it's easier to integrate. It is just a fundamentally different landscape, and one that we have to take advantage of, but in the context of that orchestration. So what I want to do now is I want to talk, bring Paul back and open up the discussion. Paul and I are going to discuss basically 3 basic things. One is AI benefit and risk assessment. It's not all upside. It's things that you have to take into consideration. There's organizational DNA. How do we make this part of everything we do as an organization? And the concept of continuous improvement. So, Paul, you there?
I'm here. You can hear me.
All right. Where are we starting, Paul?
Well, first of all, great presentation as always. Thank you very much. So for me, it's this AI thing. You know, it is different. It's changed. This is new AI. It's not the old AI. So, I mean, isn't it just going to really replace what BPM and case management do entirely?
I struggle with how to answer this question, and you could see from sort of the car selling example, I think, in terms of stories. So, you know, I'll kind of tell a story. So I live in the Bay Area in California. And, you know, if you spend time in San Francisco, there's cars driving around. They don't have drivers, right? I actually drive a Tesla, and it has some sort of self-driving capabilities. So does that mean it's going to replace cars? No, it's not. I still need an engine. I still need wheels. I still need a transmission. I still need well, I don't need a transmission with Tesla, but I still need the car. But I'm going to end up with a fundamentally different approach to how the car operates. So if I think about that in terms of digital process automation, orchestration is really hard to do. And it's something that BPM, digital process automation vendors, invested in doing a very, very long time ago. It is non-trivial, and it isn't anything that you can really think about AI doing today. Integration, getting to those back-end data sources, you still have to do that. You still have to bring that data in at the right time, in the right context. You still have to integrate with heterogeneous technologies in order to do this. You need RPA, you need intelligent document processing. But that orchestration and state management is something that is absolutely critical to how processes run. It's very hard to do. And it's not even something AI, I think, is even thinking about. And if they did, I think they would find that it's impossible. But layering in that concept of a self-driving car, layering in the concept
your analogy of the car, I mean, when you think about that, that's just part of the end-to-end point, because you want to get from A to Z.
Yep.
And, you know, you've got to get out of your front door, you've got to get down the path, you've got to get into the car. Okay, there's a bit where the car is actually getting you from one point to another point, but then you've got to get out the other end. You know, end-to-end process isn't just that bit of automation. I think Neil Ward Dutton asked a question, is generative AI the new RPA? And I think that puts it in a good context. It's like what we're talking about, this AI at the moment, it's a task. It lets you do a task, but that's just focused on one thing. Generally, the problem is trying to solve in business is end-to-end, and there's a whole set of different tasks, some which are great for AI to do, some which people need to do. And I think that's where, you know, BPM and case management really, you know, allow you to sort of, you know, work with these new AIs in very interesting ways.
It's a really interesting point. So thing one, always nice to be mentioned with Neil. Great deal of respect, fabulous analyst. But number two, I love Neil's, you know, comparison to RPA, because I think we got a little drunk on RPA, which was very frustrating for many of us as well. RPA is going to replace BPM and digital process automation. No, it isn't. It's a really interesting augmentation. It doesn't replace those core capabilities. And I think of AI in similar context to that I would with with artificial intelligence. In fact, if I was still at Forrester doing the evaluative research, as I was looking at a digital process automation platform, I would look at how deeply is your integration with RPA? How easy is it to bring that on board? What is your thinking in terms of how you're leveraging AI? Are you thinking about, this car could drive itself, not replace the car? So yeah, I think that's a really interesting point Neil brings up, and I really like it, and I agree.
Yeah, and I think going on to the one of the other points you talk about in terms of organizational DNA, process and automation allowing you to innovate. Well, in this current AI context, it's a really good example of, well, how am I going to actually get into this space? How am I going to experiment in this space? Everything's moving so fast. Who do I bet on as I'm going to use this particular AI engine to do this particular step in my processes? And I think this is where the paradigm of process and case management can actually help you innovate and experience, test, swap around the agility that it brings you. I could make a bet as to which generative AI, I should be using for my business now, because 6 months' time it'll be someone else.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, it's moving so quickly, but we do sort of know the things that we want to do. We want to take things that are unstructured and make them structured. We want to take things that don't exist and generate something in the quickest, most efficient way. But I think it also brings up another question, which is, the other elephant in the other corner is, if you're experimenting with AI and you're doing it without proper guardrails in place, you could very quickly get yourself into trouble. Paul, you shared a story with me about some of the early days of AI and using decision support, decision management systems in order to vet the outcome of the AI and put us in a safer space. Could you share that?
Yeah, so some of these things where you've got some analysis, whether it's analyzing a medical image or something like that, and you can come out, one AI system may come up with one particular sort of scoring, but another one could come up with a completely different one. And sometimes there's a context in which you need to look at everything that's coming in and decide, okay, on the balance, I'm going to go this way, that way. Actually having process as a way of deciding which route you want to take, or actually this has reached a threshold where I need to escalate it to a person to make a decision here. That's the type of thing that business process management allows you to do. So you can actually put these spots of intelligence wherever you want them, maybe have multiple intelligences feeding into things, but then, how do I actually decide whether this is safe to use, whether do I have a person start an AI go and refine it, and then maybe it's okay to go out, but maybe I need someone else to take a look at it. That type of thing fits very well with that. We did a thing where we were actually using a sort of decision table to substitute in from machine learning. So you watch a human making a decision, routing you particular ways. Over a while, machine learning can sort of say, actually, this is the way that we think it could go, and we map that onto a decision management table. The really nice thing about that was you could inspect that decision table and actually see the logic that the machine learning had evolved around it. But I think one of the other things that I find really interesting when you think about it, again, there's a number of hot topics that are coming up. You mentioned the sort of downturn. Cost is a real issue to people. Yeah. Now, if you're playing with AI, everyone who played with cloud and AWS and Google and Azure played around. What lovely. When they started scaling up, the CFO started knocking at the door saying, hang on, what's all this cloud stuff you're putting all the company money into? The same is true of AI. If you go scale up big on AI, it is going to cost you. So again, deciding when and how to use AI within your particular process and scoping it, not only gives you these guardrails, but also gives you guardrails in terms of cost. And I think the other thing, when people talk about cost, there's obviously the financial one, but again, also something that companies are being asked about is sustainability. These AI engines consume huge amounts of resource, energy, and everything else to run. If you're using something in a big way, it's not only costing you a lot of money, it's burning, burning the planet. So again, it gives you a way to control, okay, well, how much am I prepared to, impact my sustainability and control and manage that, as well as control my costs. And as you say, control the risks of relying on AI to sort of, come to conclusions that may be impactful for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly, and I think we're talking a little bit at odds with what I'd said earlier. So I want to be a little clearer. So it's everybody's job. Everybody should be looking for opportunities where they can make the business better, but in an area where there are guardrails, right? This is when and how we use a certain technology. These are the approved technologies that we use. This is when we don't use that technology, right? As we open the aperture for who is able to influence a business process. I've just flagged something. The machine just flagged something as fraud, and so we're gonna decline you. We're not going to take you on as a customer. Can I prove that in a court of law, right? So I don't want that type of logic being applied in that type of situation. So the organization needs guardrails. The vendors, I think, have always been very good about understanding where and how these things can be implemented and how guardrails are needed. So flexibility, but within guardrails, and I think particularly acute right now as we grapple with some of the implications of artificial intelligence.
I think that sort of auditability is really, when you're in regulatory industries, again, you know, this is bread and butter to us in the process and case management, where, you know, we know who did what, when, and what data was used. And again, having the orchestration be able to be your audit trail, and you know, this is the data that went into my AI process call, and this is the data that came out, and being able to actually record that and see, you know, what happened either side of that, again, gives you some more of that comfort and control around, you know, what the technology is being used for. And it comes to that, this whole thing around continuous improvement. It's just, you know, whatever you do now, you're going to change the impact of what you do by automating is going to change a bunch of stuff within your organization, and there'll be other optimizations that can come later. So that continuous improvement, as you say, is critical. But I can imagine there's actually some challenges within organizations to get that baked in. So I don't know if you've got any examples where that sort of, you know, getting a continuous improvement program going as well. I can see AI, you know, if I've got an AI project, there's so much money and interest in that, I might be able to piggyback a continuous improvement program on that. But how do you get continuous improvement really baked in?
I think it's really difficult. I think it's the last mile that is so difficult. I mentioned that this Kindred Credit Union session is one that I really want to go to, because as again mentioned it was, you know, that they're starting small, but they're doing things throughout the enterprise. They're fundamentally changing the enterprise, and I'm always really thirsty for these types of stories, right? Because I think what changes is, you know, it's really easy for Rob to put up a slide that said, who's involved? Well, everybody's involved. Okay, well, guess what? I'm, I work in the finance department. I work in logistics. I work in whatever department. This isn't my job. I'm not an application developer. I'm not supposed to be looking for process optimization. Well, you kind of are, right? You kind of are, and you've been given spreadsheets and email, and that's kind of the best you have to make things work more effectively. But now all of a sudden you have the ability to actually orchestrate and run processes, to pull these things that you're doing in an ad hoc way up into a managed platform. I think this is the last mile, and I think it's really difficult, and I think it's emerging right now around us. But I wanted to ask you, Paul, that you know, we're on camera, right? We're old. Y'all can see that. We've been at this for a very long time. This example of Kindred Credit Union, where you're looking to just, sounds like, automate everything in sight. Did you expect this, like when we were in the early days of BPM?
It's the type of thing you dreamed of. It's the type of thing where you imagine, when you're in this type of space, you imagine surely everyone's going to see and recognize the benefits, and it's just going to be played out everywhere. You know, I have a real thing at the moment with case management. As you know, for me, it's like this is the magic thing for you know, thinking about and orchestrating, you know, AI and other things. It just fits perfectly. But you know, it's not going to happen immediately. You know, someone's going to go out there and prove it in a real use case. Yep. And once you've proved it, then if you play the game right within your business, you can replay that and grow out. So it's, you know, it's always organic. If you're really lucky, you may get someone at the top level make the call and push down. But those, you don't get the continuous improvement, because this continuous improvement, it's this organizational DNA. You got to realize, you know, at the ground level, that this is stuff is making a difference to my life and making a difference to the business. And so no, that example is a great one where just, you know, they were really successful really quickly, and just showed the benefit of that sort of, here you can make quick wins, but you can grow these quick wins into more significant, more complex. And that's again where going for something like BPM and case management, going for something that's got this sophistication to carry more complex things forward than just a simplistic flow type of thing is, I think that's the other thing that BPM can offer is, you know, whatever scale of complexity you want, you can start simple, but you can get complex. Yeah,
without a doubt. So left to our own devices, Paul and I would sit and discuss this all day, like a couple of old codgers in a bar. But there is a whole program that I know you guys need to get back to. Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure. And back to your regularly scheduled programming. I'm really excited about the rest of what the conference has to bring.